For an ambitious mother, we usually think of her as maybe somebody who is a workaholic, who puts her career before her family, who probably doesn't have enough time for her kids.
The mental load that a mom carries is just so much more strenuous than a man. I think it was when he was turning 1 that something really hit me. I was at my skinniest. I was 00, and I looked at myself at the mirror one day and I was like, you're really, really, really tired. Like, something's got to give. You can't be working day and night. I saw my mom doing every single thing by herself, cooking, cleaning, working, drop off, school pickup, play dates. But here I'm so supported, and why don't I delegate and leverage this tribe versus being afraid of losing my mommy title?
Let's talk about urban India. 99% of the fathers are working. Guess what percentage of mothers are working in urban India? 28%.
So on a family level and on tribe perspective, you have to share the load. I mean, there is no rocket science sort of theory behind it. Like, mom can't do everything.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Modern Indian Parent Podcast. I'm Rinie Gupta. I'm the co-host of this podcast, and we release new episodes every Friday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So be sure to follow and subscribe on the platform of your choice for the latest updates. Today's episode is a very real and raw conversation about what the life of an ambitious and career-oriented mother looks like. As a woman and as a mother, I have personally struggled a lot to find the right balance between motherhood and career goals. Right after I gave birth, I took a big step back in my career, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to show up as a perfect mother. And it looked like I was really happy on the outside, but I was choking my dreams to grow my business because I wanted to be there for my child all the time. Honestly, I felt great about my motherhood journey. I loved how well my child was doing, but I also felt disappointed in myself all the time because I felt like I was letting my degrees and my talents go to waste. It took me a long time to understand that having big goals and ambitions for yourself is not a bad thing. I wish somebody who had been down this path had shared openly and honestly with me in terms of what I can expect and what I can do to thrive as a working woman in addition to being a mother. Lucky for you, we have invited one of the most influential female founders, Anjali Harjani, who is the founder of Malabar Baby. Malabar Baby is a leading global babywear brand, and she built it from the ground up right after having a baby. Her ambition and her confidence has fueled her to grow her business while showing up as a mother. In this episode, she's going to share the honest truth about what it is to grow in your work life while simultaneously taking care of your child. What were her support systems like? What you and I as mothers can do to thrive in our careers while showing up for our families. So if you're somebody who wants to have an exemplary work life, but you are ridden by that mom guilt of having to choose between your work and your children, then this is the perfect episode for you. So without further ado, let's welcome Anjali Harjani in to get this conversation started. Hello and welcome, Anjali. Thank you so much for coming on our show today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. When I was thinking about this topic, about how we want to talk to an ambitious mother who has built a name for herself and juggled motherhood along with it, there is absolutely nobody else that I wanted to have on besides you. You were the first person I thought of, and I'm so glad to have you here to hear about your journey.
That's really kind of you. Thank you for having me. I'm surprised that I'm the first person that came to mind, but I'm truly honored.
Yes. And before we get into the founding story of Malabar Baby, which I'm so interested in, I would love to talk to you about this thought that has been kind of going on in my mind when I was planning this episode as well. That when we use the term ambitious, all right, and when we say an ambitious mother versus an ambitious father, it connotes two very different things. For an ambitious mother, we usually think of her as maybe somebody who is a workaholic, who puts her career before her family, who probably doesn't have enough time for her kids. And it just gives you all of those impressions when you say, oh, this is an ambitious mother. Versus when we think about an ambitious father, we think of him as hardworking, somebody who's out there trying to provide for his family, making his family prosper. So there are these stigmas that I feel around me. Can I ask you, did you feel those stigmas directly or indirectly as well? Did you face them in your journey while building Malabar Baby?
Right, yeah. When you invited me to do the podcast and told me a bit about the themes we're going to be discussing, I was chatting with my colleague and I was like, geez, can you believe that we are still here? We are, it's the Modern Indian podcast, and we're talking about issues that should be gone by now. These stereotypes that our moms and our grandmothers have been through shouldn't really be prevalent anymore. And I see it in every culture, it permeates, but I think it's a bit more prevalent in Southeast Asia and in India. For me personally, I think that I pretty much navigated the world of these stigmas in a different way. I sort of authentically owned my story from day one. I think this goes into decisions one makes prior to even starting their business. So, yeah, I would say that I've felt these stigmas, but I don't personally live by them on a day-to-day basis. I don't let them affect, who I am and what I'm working on. I was chatting with my colleague and I said, what's your take on this? Like, she's a new mom, she's juggling work and having two kids. And as we started talking about it, this analogy came to mind, and it's like a man is this magician. He is pulling tricks out of his hat. He is continuously juggling things, but everything looks so glossy. It just looks like he's amazing. And a woman is more like this fire juggler. She's got lots of torches in her hand, and they are on fire. There's flames everywhere. And half of the things that you're juggling as a woman and as a mom are your career, but the other parts are this long laundry list of things to do to take care of your children. I mean, you're leading this podcast right now, but in the back of your head, you've got your daughter going to preschool. You're thinking about what she's eating. She's not feeling well, her medicines, a doctor's appointment. So both roles, the magician and the fire juggler, are so, so vital. But the mental load that a mom carries is just so much more strenuous than a man. And I think that navigating this has been something that just came very authentically to me. It has started from pretty much the spouse that I've chosen, the spouse that's chosen me. When I met my husband in New York back in the day, we both worked in finance. We both worked really, really difficult, long hours, and we both loved what we did. And I think he met me knowing that this woman has a lot of ambition. No matter what she does in her career, whether I stayed in finance at Morgan Stanley or shifted to something else, he fell in love with me for that ambition. And I think the decisions women make really early on in their life do tend to play a role later in motherhood, in building a career. So it's pretty important to think about these things from an early onset.
I'm just like, when you think about it, it's really about the people that you surround yourself with and how you own that journey, and how with that confidence you're able to say that, like, this is what I want to do with my life, and your opinion is not going to have that impact on me. But did you ever feel in your journey you had to ever tone down your ambition to fit into the mold of like a good mom that anybody else set out for you?
Not really. I ended up having my son Aryan at 32 years old. I'm 42 now. I'm telling the world my age, but I think for an Indian woman at that time, 10 years ago, the people that were around me, my tribe, so to speak, in Hong Kong, the women that I was, pregnant with at the same time, a lot of them were a lot younger than me. But when I decided to have Ari, I had already had a career. I had already gone through a lot of the trials and tribulations in my 20s that I think the people around me were going through while being pregnant. So the confidence I had, while I was pregnant and after delivering Ari, I think that really guided me to know, to own my confidence, to own my ambition, to own what I wanted to do, and to speak up about it. I lived in New York with my husband on my own, and then I moved to Asia, and we initially lived in a joint family with my in-laws, and they were amazing. I could speak really openly about what I wanted to do, and I think it was their support, my husband's support, my family's support that made me never really question what my path was going to be. In fact, they encouraged me every step of the way. But if I didn't have that, I think I probably wouldn't have had the confidence or that foundation to keep moving forward. When you mentioned to me, like, have we all been in a social situation where someone is naming or shaming somebody honestly, I think people are pretty careful about what they say around me because I think that they know that I'm a big supporter of, women trying to juggle it all and balancing it all. But the truth is that it's pretty hard to do it all at once. And I think when you yourself know that, okay, something's got to give. Today, something's just got to give. And whatever that is, it doesn't mean that you're a bad mom. It's sort of redefining what it means to be a mom to you. Why do we have to stick to these sort of generalizations and connotations of what motherhood is? Who made those up? Was it your mom? Was it, our grandmothers? I mean, they certainly don't make it like those women anymore who sort of, I don't know how they did it all. They've really juggled it all, and they did so flawlessly, but they didn't also have a choice in a lot of ways, the circumstances that they were in. But I think that I've really defined motherhood for what it means for myself. I've looked at what it means for me, and I think that's really important for you to define your goals and ambitions and decide what these things mean for yourself, not for somebody else.
Inspiring, Anjali. Firstly, when we look at the earlier generation, when we look at our parents, grandparents, they are not living the same lives as we are. They lived a very different life. They had a very different set of priorities. And the other thing is, like you said, they look like they were doing a great job at juggling everything, but they might be struggling silently. The thing with our generation is that we are not silent about it. And that's a good thing, because that's what brings together that sense of solidarity. And for you go like, hey, you're struggling, I'm struggling too. And that's really where the authentic relationships between mothers come together. So thank you so much for sharing that. This really brings me back to, okay, so let's now really talk about the Malabar Baby founding. You had a newborn right before you established the brand?
So I had the idea when I was pregnant. I used to work in finance, and I had an amazing career at Morgan Stanley in New York. And then I moved over from New York to Hong Kong with another finance firm. So I never really planned to be an entrepreneur. And then when I moved over to Asia, I moved with another finance firm, and I worked there for a bit, and it was pretty tricky times. I decided to take a little bit of a break and decide what would be the best path for myself. And during that time, I got pregnant, which does also, for women, show you in some ways that I got pregnant really quickly. And I think it was because I actually slowed down from my really chaotic schedule in finance. I slowed down and I got pregnant. And as soon as I was pregnant, I started to think about what I would need for my son. I started doing a lot of research, and being from the States, growing up in Miami and living in New York, there were tons of options, stores to go to and places to look for products. And in Asia and in Hong Kong, I was really surprised that I just couldn't find things very accessible. I couldn't find a crib, I couldn't find products, baby linens, and my head just started spinning. Like, so many ideas came to mind. Like, I could do this, I could do that, I could bring a concept from the States to Asia. But I did a lot of research when I was pregnant. I went to a lot of factories. So my husband and my in-laws and my parents are all in the textile industry. So I had a lot of support and I had a lot of guidance just to learn about manufacturing and textiles. But I don't think the plan was to necessarily start Malabar Baby. I ended up having my son, and pretty much every day I would talk to my husband about concepts related to building Malabar. And finally one day he looked at me and he was like, I can't take this anymore. You are going to talk about this forever until you actually do it. And I think he gave me sort of the push and the confidence to say, what's the worst thing that can happen? Yeah, I think that, he really, really pushed me to take the plunge. He's like, if you don't do it, someone else is going to do it and you're going to regret it.
Wow. I think it really comes back to having the right support, right? So how was it? How was it once you actually launched Malabar Baby, juggling, building a company from ground up and, having a baby in the tow? How did you manage that?
The first 10 months or so when my son was, a baby, I took things really slow. I just did a lot of research and development. I knew that this wasn't going to be sort of a side hustle. It was going to be a big career move for me, and I wanted to make sure I went in it knowing all the legalities, all the things about products and testing and different international standards. sort of research and development phase allowed me to do it whenever. I just had my laptop. I was able to schedule calls with people when Ari was sleeping. I think I was so excited about starting Malabar that a lot of things didn't phase me. I mean, lack of sleep didn't phase me. I wanted to be with Ari as much as I could because honestly, being with him gave me more fuel and more ideas to pump into Malabar. I think it was when he was turning one that something really hit me. I was at my skinniest. I was a 00, and I looked at myself at the mirror one day, and I was like, "You're really, really, really tired. Like something's got to give. You can't be working day and night, and you kind of have to come up with the right schedule and the right sort of path of how this is going to work because having a startup, it takes years to get things going, and you need a lot of motivation, and sometimes the path is really lonely, and so you're motivating yourself every day to sort of to just stay energized. So I think at that 1 year mark, I really started to figure out how to balance my time. I worked a bit from home. I worked a bit from like a co-working space, and I was really lucky that I had a lot of support from my family. So my mom lives in India, my parents live in India, and my in-laws are in Hong Kong. And I sort of had their support to always look after Ari. I have an auntie, Auntie Eddie, who actually has been part of our family before I even got married. And I think that she's been my saving grace. She loves my son, probably as much as I do. And she has been really just someone who's helped me along my journey because when I've had to travel or when I've had to be on the go, I always knew there was someone looking after Ari the same way that I would. I don't know if you have an auntie, but
I do.
I've had a lot of, you do? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of friends that have struggled with having their in-laws or an auntie or daddy even step in and be like a parental figure or sort of take over mommy's role for a little bit of time. And I think that was something that very early on I decided to sort of own and say, how lucky am I that I have this tribe of people around me? Not everyone has this opportunity. I didn't grow up that way. I saw my mom doing every single thing by herself, cooking, cleaning, working, drop-offs, school pickups, play dates. But here I'm so supported, and why don't I delegate and leverage this tribe versus being afraid of losing my mommy title? And so I think that's one of really the biggest strengths that and privileges. It's really a privilege to be able to have that sort of support system. So yeah, I think that it's been a lot of blurry days and blurry nights. I mean, Malabar is in its 8th year. My son is 10 years old. So it takes a while to get a business and a concept off the ground. But again, it's about owning what you want to do, being really clear.
Big time, big time. I think the nanny theme that you picked up. So I think just for our listeners, right, auntie is what we would call like a full-time nanny, a full-time house help. We are very lucky in Singapore and Hong Kong to be able to get that full-time house help. And I have had one ever since I was pregnant, and I don't think I could have managed it without it. And I'll tell you, very recently, I was holding like a session, and one of the mums, she comes up to me and says in the Q&A part of the masterclass, she says, hey, I know this is really off topic, but I wanted to ask you this, is that I want to go back to work, but I'm really afraid to hire a nanny because my parents are telling me that your baby's going to forget about you. And the baby only and only needs the mother. So you have to delay going back to work. And you know what she said, it just took me back to the statistic that I had come across where in urban India, let's talk about urban India, 99% of the fathers are working. Guess what percentage of mothers are working in urban India? 28%. And this is because 71% of women drop out of the workforce. And even those who manage to go back, within 3 months, 46% of those drop out. So when I was looking at these numbers, they really stuck in my head. And I was thinking about things because one of the things that people struggle with is getting help, relying on help and trusting them, right? And it's not only because what the society is telling them, but it's also because they themselves don't feel secure and they don't want to own that. My kid was born.
Yep.
I was working from home. I decided to take a career shift from teaching, which had really rigid hours. I came into sleep consulting, but I was always one step out of the door. I was always just waiting to be like, okay, I'm going to do a bit of work, but I'm trying to going to be a bit more present with my daughter, but I'm going to go back to work. And it just kept on juggling between the two, which is why I found it so hard to grow my business in the
Right.
first 1.5 years. It's only when she started going to preschool and I had that dedicated block of time. And I'm just like, okay, you know what? Finally, I'm trusting, a school, and I'm sending my kid to it. So now I'm going to focus on my work. So I only got that clarity and that willingness to trust somebody else with my child about 2 years after giving birth. And I wish I had the kind of clarity that you did from the beginning, so that I could be like, hey, you know what? I trust you with my kid. I'm going to go out to a co working space and I'm going to be back after like 5 hours of focused work, and I'll see you then. And if more women really muster up that clarity, that courage to own this part of themselves, and I want to continue working and growing myself and trusting other people with their kid, everybody will be so much happier for it. Because I
Yeah.
was miserable in those first 2 years where I was just like, I feel like I'm not going anywhere. That ambitious part of me, I feel like I was like choking it
Yep.
almost. And
Yep.
I wish I had spoken to somebody like you at that point.
It's so natural to feel when you mention the word choking. I mean, sometimes we're our own enemies in a certain situation, right? But we've got hormones raging, we're juggling things. It's hard to really get the perspective. I think that I have a very, very strong relationship with my mom and my mother-in-law, and both of them, my mom still works till today. She's in her 70s, and she's the CFO of our family business, which is in India. And my mother-in-law, worked every day for years helping my father-in-law build his business. And I think just having women around me that really sort of supported what I wanted to do and kind of helped, I had a lot of open conversations. It's not always easy to have these open conversations with your in-laws or with your parents. And I think I trusted them as well, that they told me, this is okay. And when you're not around, we're around, or auntie's around. So that sort of reassured me a lot. I can't say that it all came from within from day one. When you were telling me about your experience, I remembered a time where I definitely questioned if I was doing the right thing. I had gone to a show in Paris, Maison Objet, to exhibit for the first time, and my husband actually came along with me. And it was about 10 days that we were gone, and Ari was probably 3 years old, a little less than 3 years old. And my mom came down from India, and my in-laws were around. And I mean, he had a party every day. He was living his best life.
I'm sure Dada,
So when
Dadi,
we came,
Nani, everybody together.
yeah, the other Donnie, exactly. He was okay. He was being fed well. He was being taken care of. Had a lot of activities. So we get back 10 days later, and I told my mom, keep him in his little playpen, and we're gonna sneak up next to him and surprise him in a soothing way. So we get there, my husband and I, and I'm like, I'll go first, and we're like right by him, and we're like, Ari, hi, we're back, and he's looking at us like dead center, straight in the eyes, and he has no reaction. There's no smile on his face. I think at this point, like, tears are running down my face. It felt like 10 minutes. It was probably 20 seconds. But my husband felt it too. I mean, we were both experiencing this as parents, full on, like, okay, our kid, um, either our kid didn't remember us or our kid was really upset. And 10 seconds went by, and he hugged us, and he was laughing, but it took him that moment to process. But really, that experience shook me, made me think about it for weeks. And anytime I was having a bad moment, I was like, what am I doing this for? Am I doing this, like, am I sacrificing time with him? Am I making him have issues that he doesn't need to have? But really, these were things that I needed to grapple with. It wasn't him. Honestly, our kids, I feel like Ari has been so blessed that he's had an opportunity to spend quality time, not time where, mommy's monitoring what Dada Dadi are doing. My sister-in-law takes him out. He has sleepovers at their house. And when Nani comes over, she goes out with him. And I think that the sort of golden nuggets that our parents have to share with this generation, there's nothing that compares to it. So I really, really, if for anyone struggles with sort of letting go of control a bit and trusting, just do it. Do it for yourself, for your sanity, and do it for your child. That exposure and that experience, that can never come back. That can never be taught. That's just something that's felt through love and through experiences with their grandparents.
Absolutely. I think that depth of the bond can never really come in if the parent or especially the mother is always hovering in the background. I think I'm a bit of a hoverer myself, but like I know that when they are kind of left to their devices and they're able to connect by themselves and really build that bond, your child actually can experience attachment from more than one figure, and that's really good for them because they are developing different parts of their personality. Like, I'll tell you, whenever I have gone back to India and I've had more time with my parents, my kids language development happens in like leaps and bounds over that course of that 1 month in India, which it's not able to happen when she's in Singapore. And I see that impact, of the people around her. But you know what, Anjali, I think one of the things why, including me, we are not able to trust, let's say, and uncles and aunties 100% with our kids. It's because we just have different styles of parenting. We have different boundaries. And kids and parents nowadays, we're getting more aware thanks to Instagram and parenting courses and so many things that parents are now doing to do better, learn better. Maybe their philosophy about discipline, their philosophy about screen time, junk food, sleep timings. All of these things can be different from what maybe a grandparent would have because they come from a different time, a different age. And trying to align those can be very difficult. So, how did you manage that? Like, if you were sharing the responsibility of your child's care with so many different people, right, which is wonderful, how did you manage to have a semblance of consistency and good boundaries across all caregivers?
So, yeah, it's absolutely tricky figuring out the right boundaries with your parents or your in laws or your caregivers because you're going to have a sort of set schedule, set sort of type of different guidelines that are going to matter to you and how you want to raise your kid. But I do think that I would, that the main thing that I was always really focused on was, Ari was young, was what he was eating. I think that was just one thing that I had to nail down right from the start. So I didn't say that, sweets can't be given or, no, when you go out, you can't try things. But I was very clear about what Ari's meals were on a regular basis. I had that sort of all set in stone. And I think they respected it. They saw that Ari really enjoyed eating home food and really loved what his routine was. And that sort of aided them. So I would say that, giving guidance, and it's not like where you're giving it like, here are the rules, you must follow my rules. I think it's about just saying, look, this really works for Ari. He's happy when he has a routine. He's happy when he has a schedule. And that just means that when it's time to go out, he's going to be in a better mood. And I think they really saw that. When they were given the autonomy to be at home with him on their own, they saw like, okay, this guy likes routine and he does well with it. So let's kind of go with the flow. But I will have to say that, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, my mom, like they'll always message me if something goes a little amiss and they'll say, we were out and we gave him some ice cream and you just have to go with the flow a bit. Like what's the big deal? But I do agree some people have a little bit more of a difficult or tricky situation where it's not that easy for them to control things. So I think that just being very clear about it and setting schedules, setting boundaries, but not being a control freak,
Yeah.
Like these parents, they raised us, yeah? Let's think about that a bit too. We turned out okay, and they did it with far less help. So sometimes you just gotta be a little bit more laid back.
I get it. I think, Anjali, like what you said earlier, is that you had your child at 32. So it's not just that your career was sorted, but all your other priorities as well. You had a very clear idea about how you wanted to do certain things, right? And then that's why it's just about you as a person. They trust your judgment, which is why they wouldn't want to superimpose your judgment with theirs, which is, I think, a struggle with a lot of families in which, first time moms, they're like, oh, we don't know what to do. And then they're getting bombarded by advice. I think that we know better vibe is kind of what holds moms back from saying that, like, okay, you know what? You take my kid and see what you want to do. But I love the fact that you said it's about communicating. It's not about imposing. It's not about giving them a rule book and saying this like my way or the highway. You're saying, hey, this is like all of us are a part of the caregiving team for our child. So let's do what's best for the child. So it's not about us. We don't make it about ourselves. We make it about the child. and automatically people will come together, right? So
Yep.
Anjali, the overarching theme that I can see is that for it's always a team effort. Okay, but even if you know that your child is being cared for by the most trusted caregivers you could have, there are still certain things that moms feel really guilty about. And I think one thing is breastfeeding, because that is something that weighs heavily on the decision of when to go back to work, how big of a work commitment you want to take. What was your journey like with regards to breastfeeding versus formula feeding, and what was your perspective on it?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I mean, fed is best. That's the number one overarching theme. However your baby is fed, whatever works for them, try to follow your intuition and the way your baby is what they're leaning towards. But I had a really tricky time with breastfeeding. I was really lucky initially. Ari latched immediately in the hospital. I was able to, I had milk and I was able to feed him and things were smooth sailing. I got home and I think I got a little bit overzealous and I was like, I need to learn to pump. And everyone says you need to learn to pump because if you don't learn to pump, you can't leave the house and you can't be, you're going to basically be with your kid 24/7. I think I probably read too much about this. And I started to experiment with pumping very early. And I think for me, it just didn't work to my benefit, or I just didn't have enough guidance, honestly. My mom, my mother-in-law, they never pumped. I don't think it existed per se for them. And I didn't really feel comfortable asking too many people about it for some reason. I guess I didn't feel like I had that support network, or I don't know. I pumped a lot. I got mastitis and I was in a lot of pain. And I went through that, which a lot of people go through as well. But during the process, I think Ari got really used to being fed from a bottle. So he was drinking my milk, but it was everything that was coming out of pumping, and he was getting used to the speed and the ease of just having a bottle whenever he wanted. And one day I woke up and I was trying to it was the middle of the night, I was trying to feed him, and he wouldn't latch. And I was like, this is so weird, and I kind of thought I had it down pat by this point. And he wouldn't latch, and he was crying, screaming. So I luckily had some milk in a bottle that was saved in the fridge. I gave it to him, and he drank right away. So it's like, okay, go back to sleep, think about it, go. Next day comes, I'm trying to latch again, and he won't latch. So I got super paranoid. I think I took it really personally. Immediately felt like I wasn't good enough. There was just some reason why. I mean, I should have been a bit more thoughtful about this and just realized this kid is a really hungry, ferocious eater, and the speed at which my body was producing it wasn't quick enough for him. But instead, I went to a doctor, and I talked to the doctor at length about it with Ari, and I said that I absolutely want to be able to do this. It just felt like being a mom, that's what it meant, that you need to breastfeed your child. No one told me this, but I think just for me, it just meant a lot to me. And I went home, I followed the advice he gave me, and Ari latched again, but I could tell he just wasn't happy. He was hungry still, and like it just was this terrible cycle. And so I started to pump exclusively and supplement with formula, because after a while, I don't think my body was able to do just one, just pump enough for him. But I struggled with it immensely, and I beat myself up for it. I didn't even talk to my husband about it that much. I think I maybe just felt like I wasn't good enough at that point. And it was early on, but it was a time that I think it taught me later, when I had a bit more clarity that what's the big deal? Like, he's a happy camper. He's eating. I was lucky enough to even have breast milk for as long as I did. And great, it worked. But I formula fed him for a long time as well. And I didn't really feel much of a difference either way in terms of his personality or his growth. Touch wood. He is, healthy and happy. And I think it goes back to, this is just one example, right? But as you said, there are so many things that we just beat ourselves up for. We're too hard on ourselves, and it doesn't really have to be that way. And I was actually listening to two women who are in their 50s, Lisa Ray and Sujata Asimo. They both live in Dubai. And they're in their 50s and they're talking about menopause and they're talking about confidence. And they brought up how now that they're in their 50s, they don't give a damn about anyone. They have this confidence that, nothing can shake them. And I love watching their stories and hearing them, but I kept thinking, why wait till you're 50? You've got the best years of your life right now as well. Own that confidence now, own that ambition now, own your story. Not everyone's going to love it, and that's okay. Um, but as long as you're doing things respectfully, communicating with your partner, communicating with your family, it's almost about over communication, almost. Like I over communicate with my own son. If I can't attend something or something's going on at work, he's in the loop. I have a son. I have one baby, and I think it's really important for me to raise my son with the right tools and experiences so that when he's a dad one day or he's a spouse one day, he knows what it's all about. He knows that the juggle is real. And if mom couldn't be somewhere, sometime, there was a reason for it. And he's so curious now. He will always ask me questions about a meeting. Sometimes he's one of the first people I tell when I've got a big pitch and I'm close to closing something, and I'm like, don't tell anyone, you're my good luck charm. And he'll give me some tips. And I just think that sort of over communication with your children is so important as well. It really makes a difference. They don't feel like they're out of the loop.
Done. We shouldn't underestimate our kids because, like you said, it's not only but what he has to do when he becomes a dad, but it's also about you are setting the example for him, for his partner. Because you saw your mother and your mother-in-law work till a much, till this age. They set that example for you, so you could carry on with that ambition. You are setting that example for your son, and he would then support his partner. So it's really that effect that whatever you're doing right now, you're modeling it for him, and you're making life easier for your daughter-in-law in the future.
Totally, yes,
Right?
absolutely. And that's the aim. I've had it pretty easy with my mother-in-law and with my mom, and honestly with my father-in-law. My father-in-law, he's passed away, but he was honestly one of my biggest supporters. When I told him that I had this idea, I feel a little emotional about it, but he was just like, so go do it. What are you waiting for? I've got your back. And I think that without even realizing he was old school in a lot of ways, his ethos, his values, but his demeanor and his values is what probably trickled down to my husband and attracted me to my husband, and enables me to have this sort of communication and bond with my husband. So it really does make a difference. How we are raising our kids today makes a huge difference on what is going to be important for them and how they are going to act in their grown-up life.
Moms think that we need to sacrifice everything for ourselves so that we can be there for our kids. But one of the best things that we can do for our kids is setting that example for them. That when they go out there in their life, they have those values because they have seen it front and center, watching their mom walking out confidently for meetings and doing things and juggling them and just feeling like, hey, you know what? I know I maybe missed that PTM or I maybe missed that play, but I'm here for you. So tell me, Anjali, women do end up struggling to either get back to the workforce once they have had a kid, or if they do get back, they end up dropping out. And most of them will say it's because of childcare responsibilities and house responsibilities. How do you think that as a family, we can enable more women to stay in the workforce and really pursue their ambitions?
So on a family level and on, a tribe perspective, you have to share the load. I mean, there is no rocket science sort of theory behind it. Like mom can't do everything. Whether it's my husband and I have a shared calendar. Shared for personal, professional, everything is on this calendar and it's color coded. It was his idea. So I'm pretty lucky. He's pretty organized like that. We literally build in fillers where we're like, okay, do not schedule, Papa pick up Ari, do not forget. I have this trust issue sometimes. Like you give you give a little to a family member to help you out with, but it's that maternal instinct. You're like, oh, should I have done that? But if you don't trust, how are you going to get through to actually sharing the load? So I
Absolutely.
think that being really, communicating, sharing the load within family, within your family, your immediate circle is essential. I mean, there's no way around it.
So I really love the fact that your family still turned to you to understand, okay, what's the best thing for Ari, and consulted you when things were not great. And they were open with you. Let's say if they did sort of not follow a certain boundary, let's say it's about sweets, right? Like they will come and tell you that, like, hey, I gave your kid ice cream. They're not going to try to hide that from you. So transparency is also so important.
Yes, honesty, openness, transparency. If you're playing a game, that like, trying to whether it's one up or, be the best and not kind of let them have a chance to shine, meaning the other caregivers, it's not going to work out. So being really transparent, honest, organized. There's no doubt. I mean, all of us that are juggling careers and being moms, we are pretty organized. Whether it's a schedule, whether it's now my son he's 10. So he's organized on his own because I've kind of taught him that that's really important. You need to, if you have soccer and you need two shoes and two bags, you need to pack this. If you forgot something, I'm sorry, there are consequences for that. I mean, okay, I'm not going to say that I won't be running there with his missing shin guards. But I think that checklist really shows them, like, okay, I can do this too. I need to focus on this. I need to be responsible. Going back to like sweets and stuff like that, because like I was telling you, Ari's a big foodie and he likes to also venture out and experience new cuisines. And I think that just seeing like my balance and discipline has sort of just automatically, it's in his he's very balanced now. So he'll say, okay, I had bubble tea today. I don't think I should have dessert because I've had this big bubble tea. And I think he's starting to sort of make his own decisions based on the experiences and conversations that he's hearing around him. So, we're not sort of everything's kind of very out in the open and transparent, even with him. So then eventually, as they become older and, their own people, they can make their own decisions. It doesn't happen automatically, but it does happen. And I can say there's light at the end of the tunnel for sure with these sorts of things. So those are really important for your home setting. But I guess just for women in general, like if you had a career before having a baby, the networks that you have, the mentors you have, the women that have inspired you, I would say do not be shy at all with keeping in touch with people. If you haven't spoken to them for a year or two, it's okay. It's never too late. The right people will always reciprocate and respond. So I would say keep a network, tap in on mentors. It's never too late. Don't be shy. Sometimes people miss an email and a call. Write back. It's absolutely fine. What's the worst thing that happens? They're not going to respond? Okay, cool. Don't respond.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to penalize you for going to have a baby. Like things, life gets in the way, but there is always ways to get back. And especially women supporting women, I think we just get it. I was planning to read this book called The Power of Pause, and it's a book about how moms can take a pause in their motherhood, and that doesn't necessarily need to meet. It doesn't need to be a bad thing. You can still hold on to that ambition and still keep in touch, upskill yourself, and do other things in this period so that when you are ready, you come back stronger.
Absolutely. And a really good point you're making there is that you may not necessarily go back to the same job you had right before you had a baby. I have seen so many stories. I mean, I think the two of us, Sanchita, I mean, we're great examples of women who went through motherhood, and pivoted.
Yeah,
And
we
that's
pivoted. That's the
totally
exact
cool
word I
too.
was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, we pivoted. And I mean, we're lucky to have been able to think about what our strengths are, to be able to create these jobs and these sort of professions that are very well needed, allow us to work remotely, allow us to, connect with women around the world and help people. I think that when I was debating to start Malabar or go back to an HR role, I tried to think about like what are the parts of my personality and my strengths that I really, really enjoy. If I am not going to be with my son 100% of the time, what would make me happy? I don't want to be in a job that I feel like crap. I want to be somewhere that I feel like I'm building something, I feel like I'm using my strengths, and I feel good every day. So that the time that I am actually with my son, it's amazing. I'm just a lot more happier. I knew what made me tick was having my own career and starting and growing Malabar. There was no doubt in my mind.
Wow, wow. I think it's this clarity, this confidence that you exude, which has kind of taken you so far into this journey and it's gonna keep taking you really, really far. If you could leave like one last nugget for an ambitious mother who wants to really make it happen for herself, right? What would it be?
I think the topic of balance is, going to come up in your life forever. It's always a juggling act. I truly believe that you can have it all, but not all at once. And once you're okay with knowing what stage you need a certain thing in your life, everything will work out. It's just a matter of timing, and it's just a matter of really trusting yourself. So own your ambition, own your career, own your family. Don't let anyone tell your story. It's your story to be told.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Anjali. So, to everybody listening and watching this episode, I'm sure you have been super inspired by this. For more content like this, do like and share and subscribe to our channel. And we hope to keep bringing you real motherhood stories to inspire you and make your parenting journey easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Rinie. Thank you for having me.